It was late October, and the air around Deadwood Campsite was chilly, but the campfire burned brightly, casting long shadows into the surrounding forest. The group of friends, Jenna, Tom, Lisa, and Aaron, had driven out there for a weekend getaway, eager to spend a night sharing scary stories under a sky full of stars. They sat close to the fire, their faces glowing in its warm light, while the towering trees seemed to lean in, listening. But Deadwood had its own reputation. Rumors of vanished campers and strange sightings in the forest had surrounded it for years. The locals warned visitors to stay away, but Jenna brushed it off, convinced it was nothing but ghost stories. As the night deepened, they shared tales of haunted houses, ghostly apparitions, and creatures that lurked in the night. But Lisa leaned forward, her face lit with a mischievous glint. "I've got one you've never heard before," she whispered, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. "This one happened right here, at Deadwood." A shiver ran down the group, but they leaned in curious. Lisa took a deep breath and began. "About 20 years ago, a girl named Mia came camping here with her family. She was just 12 years old, full of energy, and always wandering off on her own. One evening, her parents noticed she hadn't come back from her walk by the lake, so they went looking for her, calling her name, shining their flashlights into the darkness." Lisa's voice dropped lower. "They searched for hours, but she was gone. They never found a single trace of her. Some say she got lost in the woods, others think she drowned in the lake, but some locals swear they still see her. They say she wanders the woods, her eyes wide with fear, like she's looking for something or someone." The fire crackled, filling the silence as Lisa's words lingered. Aaron scoffed, trying to break the tension. All right, that's just a classic ghost story. Deadwood's creepy, but there's nothing out there. We're all fine." Jenna laughed too, but her eyes flickered nervously toward the shadows beyond the firelight. The woods felt denser, the night air colder, and an uneasy feeling began creeping over her. As they prepared to turn in for the night, a sudden noise rustled from the trees behind them. It sounded like footsteps, slow, deliberate, and much too close. The group froze, listening intently, the crackling fire suddenly their only comfort in the vast, silent woods. "Maybe it's just an animal," Jenna whispered, trying to convince herself more than the others. But Aaron's face was pale. "No way. That sounded human." Just as he said this, they heard it again, louder this time, followed by the faintest whisper, like someone calling from far away. "Help! Help me!" Their heads turned toward the sound, hearts pounding, breaths held. The voice was faint but unmistakable, and it was coming from deeper in the woods. Lisa's face was white as a sheet. What was that?" Tom grinned, but it was forced. "It's just an echo, or maybe some other campers trying to mess with us." But the whisper came again, louder, and this time the voice was clearer, almost pleading. "Help me, please." Something about it was deeply unsettling, almost unnatural. The group stared out into the darkness, trying to see anything beyond the firelight. But there was only thick, black forest. After an hour of restless waiting, Aaron broke the silence. "Look, someone might actually be out there. Maybe they're hurt or lost. We should check it out." Reluctantly, the others agreed. Armed with their flashlights, they set out into the woods, staying close together, their footsteps muffled by the thick, dead leaves. The trees loomed tall, their gnarled branches twisting above like skeletal fingers. They wandered for what felt like an eternity, their flashlights cutting through the pitch darkness. Every few minutes, they'd hear the voice again, weak and hoarse, always just ahead of them. "Help me, please." As they moved farther from the campsite, they noticed something strange. A figure seemed to appear in the distance, standing still, half hidden among the trees. It was a girl, wearing a tattered dress, her face obscured by her hair. She seemed frozen, staring at something in the distance. The group stopped, their hearts pounding, too terrified to move any closer. Jenna's flashlight flickered, casting a shaky beam over the figure. "Is that?" Jenna's voice was barely a whisper. Lisa swallowed hard. It looks like a girl. Could that be Mia?" The figure didn't move, but her head turned ever so slowly toward them, revealing a pale, emotionless face. Her eyes were dark, hollow pits, and her mouth hung open in an eternal, silent scream. Then, in an instant, she vanished, leaving the group standing in stunned silence, the night closing in around them. A wave of dread washed over them, heavy and suffocating. Jenna broke the silence. "We need to get out of here, now!" But as they turned to go back, they realized they had no idea where they were. Every tree looked the same, and their footprints had been swallowed by the carpet of leaves. Panic set in as they shone their flashlights around, desperately trying to find a familiar path back. Then, the whisper came again, louder than before. "Help! Me!" It was no longer distant. It was right behind them. They ran, stumbling through the underbrush, branches snagging their clothes and cutting their skin. But the whispers grew louder, surrounding them, echoing through the trees. "Help me! Please, stay with me!" The forest seemed to close in tighter, twisting and bending, like it was alive, trapping them in a maze. They ran faster, their breaths coming in sharp, shallow gasps, their flashlights flickering as they went deeper into the woods. And then, out of nowhere, they were back at the campsite. Relief washed over them until they saw the fire was out and all their belongings were scattered as if something had torn through them. Then, Jenna noticed something carved into the ground where they had been sitting. "Leave." Aaron's voice was barely audible. Who would have done this? But there was no time to question it, as the whispers returned, louder than ever, drowning out everything else. "Stay with me." Suddenly, Jenna's flashlight illuminated the same figure they had seen in the woods. She was standing on the other side of the fire pit, staring at them, her eyes filled with terror, as if she wanted to warn them of something horrible. "Run!" she mouthed, her voice barely a whisper over the roar of the silence. In pure panic, the group fled the campsite, bolting toward where they thought the trail was. The whispers chased them, louder, closer, almost as if they were running alongside them, closing in. Jenna was the last in line, running as fast as she could, when she tripped over a root, tumbling into the dirt. She scrambled to her feet, only to see the figure, Mia, standing just inches away from her, her face twisted with fear. "You need to leave," she whispered. "They're coming." Jenna felt a cold, skeletal hand wrap around her ankle, pulling her down. She screamed, kicking desperately, breaking free as Tom grabbed her arm, yanking her back up. They ran and ran until finally they burst out of the woods and onto the road. The silence hit them like a wall, the whispers gone as quickly as they had come. They collapsed, panting, the chill of the night air biting through their clothes. When they looked back, the forest was still, and the campsite was nowhere in sight. The next morning, the friends returned with the park rangers, only to find an empty clearing. There was no sign of a campsite, no fire pit, and no carvings in the ground. The ranger shook his head. "Deadwood's an old place," he said, his voice somber. "A lot of folks go missing here, and those that come back, well, they don't talk much about it." As they left Lakeview, Jenna caught a glimpse of the trees in her rearview mirror. Standing at the edge of the forest was the figure of the young girl, her hollow eyes watching them, her mouth forming one last desperate plea.